Any 66 GT350 Shelby Mustang is special enough to be worthy of its own video, but today we're going to take a closer look at Midnight Confession. This is our 1966 Shelby here at CJ's, and it has an amazing story. '66 was the second year for the iconic GT350 Shelby. Now, while the 65s were only available in white, the 66 got a little bit softer and came in more color options, including blue, red, green, and black. The quarter window factory extractor vents were replaced by windows, functional brake scoops were added, and the first time an automatic transmission was an option. Also optional, a Paxton supercharger that would push the Shelby over 440 horsepower. The battery was also moved from the trunk to the front of the car, and back seats became an option. Now, in addition to the 1,373 GT350s available in '66, the other option was the GT350H. In order to help Shelby's sales, Ford convinced Hertz to basically buy 1,003 fastbacks that were converted to GT350 Hertz Shelbys and were used for rental. Also, 4 experimental convertibles were also made in anticipation of the '67 being a convertible option. Whenever anybody visits us here at CJ Pony Parts in Harrisburg, there's 2 things they take photos of: the Mustang sticking out of the ground out front and our '66 GT350. Now, this car has been a part of CJ since 2000, but its history obviously goes all the way back to 1966. Now, this car has always been local to our area. It was purchased at Francis Ford in Harrisburg as a brand new car back in 1966. Now, when it was purchased, most Shelbys were being used for road course cars and road racing. Now, this car was a drag car from day one. Its odometer only shows 19,000 original miles. Now, obviously, looking at this car, you can tell it's lived quite a history. Like I said, it was a race car from day one. It was drag raced in the Harrisburg area, US 30 down in York, all over the area. And then a few years later, there's a couple different stories. But basically, the rumor is the owner's wife got tired of him spending so much time and money on his race car that she set it on fire. Now, you look inside this car, the dash is melted, the cluster's melted. You can tell there were signs of a fire. At that point, the car was basically put away and it sat for a while. Now, once the car was set on fire, that pretty much ended its racing days. At that point, it somehow ended up at a local farm where the residents took turns using it for target practice. As you can see, the entire side of this car is filled with shotgun holes. Now, after it was used as target practice, it somehow then got moved up to Duncannon, Pennsylvania, right by the Clarks Ferry Bridge. That's where it began its new career, but not as a race car, but as a doghouse. And that is where CJ's first found the '66 Shelby. Now, once the owners of CJ's found the car in Duncannon, they did what most car guys would do. They went up to the owner of the house and asked if the car was actually going to be for sale. Now, we all know the story here.
She's not for sale.
Nope, it's not for sale. We're going to fix it up someday. My husband wants to restore it. And the car sat. Well, years later, the car disappeared, and we all figured the car was gone, sold, destroyed, whatever, and it would never actually see the light of day again. Then a few years later, somebody showed up in the showroom here at CJ's, and he was the new owner of the Shelby. Now, when the new owner came to CJ's somewhere in the late '80s, early '90s, he was doing what most people were doing at CJ's. He was looking for parts for his car because he'd picked up this Shelby and wanted to restore it. Now, he was speaking with the owners. He was a very good customer of the shop, and he basically said that he was looking to build this car, and everybody in the area kind of already knew the story of it. And we basically said again, hey, if you ever want to sell this car, please let us know. We all know the history of it, and we'd love to have it here at CJ's. Well, as luck would have it, right around 2000, maybe 10 years later, he actually showed up in the showroom, spoke with the owner of CJ's, and we made a deal to acquire this Shelby. When we bought the car in 2000, we bought it pretty much exactly as you see here. The only difference is the previous owner had installed a 6-cylinder engine and transmission just so we could move the car around his property. We ended up removing that, and we initially put this car actually in our salvage yard and covered it for storage to restore it later. We eventually realized that, hey, this is a Shelby, it doesn't deserve to sit in the salvage yard, and for safety and because of the history of the car, we ended up bringing it to the CJ showroom, and that's where it's been ever since. Now, in the 20 years we've owned the Shelby, the only other time it has left one of the CJ showrooms was in the early 2000s to go to a Shelby convention down in Atlantic City. And we headed down there with Midnight Confession, and again, if you ever been to a Shelby convention, beautifully restored cars everywhere, and we come rolling in with this thing. This car actually got a ton of attention down there. So much that actually Carroll Shelby himself came over at one point, couldn't believe somebody would let one of his cars get quite this bad, but he liked it so much, he signed the fender and he signed the roof for us. Like I mentioned before, anytime anybody ever visits CJ's, whether they're here to get parts, they're here for an event, they're here for a tour, whatever, they always ask, what's the story with the beat up Shelby in the showroom? Well, now you guys know that story. Now, what is going to be the next chapter of the story? well, that's still basically going to be written. I mean, at this point, the car has been so popular in its current condition, there's a temptation to leave it there. But the owner of CJ's is obviously the owner of this car, and down the road, he does want to restore it. Is he going to restore it back to original, or will we restore it back to the race car it used to be? Well, time will tell. You'll just have to wait and find out.